The stars looked different through the thick glass of the Endeavor's observation deck. Captain Sarah Chen pressed her palm against the cold surface and watched the distant lights grow brighter as their ship moved deeper into space than any human had ever traveled before. Behind her, the soft hum of the fusion reactor filled the silence. This was humanity's first real journey to the stars, and Sarah felt the weight of 6 billion people watching from Earth. The Endeavor was not much to look at. It had taken Earth's combined resources to build this one ship. Chemical rockets pushed them out of Earth's gravity. Then the fusion drive took over for the long journey. The life support systems recycled their air and water with 90% efficiency. The hull was made of the strongest steel alloys human science could produce. To humanity, it was their greatest achievement. To the galaxy, it would soon prove to be nothing special. Sarah turned away from the stars and walked through the narrow corridors to the bridge. Her crew of 12 specialists worked quietly at their stations. Each person on this ship had trained for years for this moment. They carried with them samples of human art, music, literature, and science. Earth's governments had chosen these gifts carefully, hoping to show the galaxy that humanity was ready to join the community of intelligent species. The mission was simple in theory, but complex in practice. Radio telescopes on Earth had detected patterns in space transmissions that could only come from other intelligent beings. After decades of listening and learning, human scientists had finally decoded enough to understand basic galactic languages. They learned that thousands of species belonged to something called the Galactic Hegemony. This massive government controlled most of the galaxy and decided which species could join their community. Dr. James Martinez, the mission's lead linguist, looked up from his translation console. His dark eyes showed excitement mixed with worry. "Captain, I'm picking up more transmissions. The signal strength suggests we're getting close to one of their patrol routes." Sarah nodded and took her seat in the captain's chair. The bridge felt cramped compared to the starship she had seen in old science fiction movies, but it was real and it was theirs. "How much longer until we reach the coordinates?" 6 hours at current speed, replied Lieutenant Commander Alex Petrov from the navigation station. His Russian accent was thick with concentration as he monitored their course. The coordinates had been calculated from years of signal analysis, marking what appeared to be a major shipping lane for galactic traffic. The next 6 hours passed slowly. The crew ran system checks and prepared for what they hoped would be humanity's introduction to galactic civilization. Sarah reviewed her speech for the 100th time. Every word had been chosen by teams of Earth's best diplomats, scientists, and linguists. They had one chance to make a first impression that would determine humanity's future among the stars. The alarm chimed softly. "Contact," announced Ensign Lisa Wong from the sensor station. Her young face was pale with excitement. "Large vessel approaching from galactic north. Size estimates suggest it's at least 10 times our mass." Sarah felt her heart beat faster. "Open communications on all frequencies we know. Send the standard greeting package." Dr. Martinez's fingers flew over his console as he transmitted humanity's carefully prepared first message. The package contained mathematical proofs, star charts showing Earth's location, samples of human language, and a formal request for peaceful contact. Everything humanity knew about galactic protocol suggested this was the proper way to introduce themselves. The response came faster than expected. The alien ship's transmission was crisp and clear, translated automatically by the Endeavor's computers. The voice that spoke was cold and mechanical, though the translation software tried to add emotional tones. "Unknown vessel. You are in violation of Hegemony space traffic regulations. Reduce speed and prepare to be boarded. Failure to comply will result in your destruction." Sarah exchanged glances with her crew. This was not the diplomatic greeting they had hoped for, but it was contact. She signaled Dr. Martinez to respond. "This is Captain Sarah Chen of the Earth vessel Endeavor. We come in peace, seeking first contact with the Galactic Hegemony. We are not armed and pose no threat." The alien ship moved closer, and the Endeavor's sensors finally got a clear picture of what they were dealing with. The vessel was massive, shaped like a curved blade with weapon ports clearly visible along its hull. Its hull gleamed with a silver-blue metal that seemed to shift and move in the light of nearby stars. Advanced energy shields shimmered around it like heat waves. "Earth vessel, you will shut down your engines and submit to boarding procedures. Resistance is not advised." Sarah had no choice. The Endeavor's fusion drive powered down, and the ship drifted in space. Through the observation windows, they could see smaller craft launching from the alien vessel. These boarding pods moved with incredible speed and precision, attaching to the Endeavor's hull with barely a vibration. The aliens who came aboard were unlike anything humanity had imagined. Commander Zethkar was tall and thin, with grayish skin that seemed to have a natural metallic sheen. His forearms moved independently as he examined the human ship, while his large black eyes took in every detail. Behind him came a squad of soldiers in powered armor that made them look even more imposing. Sarah and her crew waited in the main corridor, hands visible and empty. The translation device Dr. Martinez wore around his neck converted their words into the galactic common language. While the aliens' responses came back in English, Commander Zethkar looked at the humans with what could only be described as disappointment. He spoke to his soldiers in their own language before addressing the humans. "I am Commander Zethkar of the Hegemony patrol fleet. Your vessel has entered regulated space without proper documentation or clearance. We apologize for any violation," Sarah said, stepping forward. "We are explorers from Earth, seeking to make first contact with galactic civilization. We had no knowledge of your regulations." Zethkar's expression did not change. One of his forehands operated a scanning device that he pointed at each human in turn. "Earth, we have no record of this world in our databases. Your technology appears primitive. Chemical propulsion systems, basic fusion reactor, crude life support. How did you travel so far with such limited capabilities?" Dr. Martinez answered, "Our journey took 3 years. We used our most advanced technology and the combined resources of our entire planet to build this ship." The alien commander made a sound that the translator interpreted as laughter, though it sounded more like metal scraping against metal. 3 years for a journey our ships complete in days. Interesting. For the next several hours, the aliens examined everything about the Endeavor and its crew. They scanned the humans with devices that made them feel dizzy and strange. They copied all the ship's computer files and studied samples of human technology. Zethkar asked many questions about Earth, human society, and their level of development. Sarah tried to present humanity in the best possible light. She spoke about Earth's diverse cultures, their achievements in science and art, their dreams of joining the galactic community as peaceful partners. She showed them recordings of human music, examples of human literature, and samples of Earth's finest art. The aliens examined these offerings with what appeared to be polite interest, but Sarah could see they were not impressed. When she finished her presentation, Zethkar conferred with his soldiers in their own language. The translation device could not interpret their rapid, complex discussion, but their tone suggested they were not taking humanity seriously. Finally, Zethkar turned back to the humans. "Captain Chen, your species shows typical development patterns for a primitive civilization. Your technology is approximately 1,000 years behind galactic standards. Your lifespan is extremely short by galactic measures. Your physical capabilities are limited. You have only recently achieved basic space travel." Sarah felt her heart sink, but she maintained her diplomatic composure. "We understand we have much to learn. That is why we have come seeking contact. We hope to trade knowledge and friendship with more advanced civilizations." Zethkar gestured to the human artifacts they had examined. "Your cultural productions are quaint. Music and art have little value in galactic commerce. Literature from primitive species rarely offers new insights. Your scientific knowledge, while adequate for your development level, contributes nothing new to galactic understanding." Dr. Martinez stepped forward. "Perhaps we could offer something else. Human perspectives on problem solving, our unique approaches to challenges, our diversity of thought." The alien commander's large black eyes seemed to focus on something far away. "The galaxy has seen millions of species develop along similar patterns. Humans are not unique in any meaningful way. Your planet occupies an unremarkable position in an unimportant system. You have no strategic resources, no special abilities, no advanced technologies to contribute." Sarah felt anger rising in her chest, but she forced herself to remain calm. "What must we do to be considered for membership in the Hegemony?" "Develop your technology for another 1,000 years. Perhaps then your species might be worth a second evaluation. Until that time, you are restricted to your home system. Any attempt to leave Earth's local space will be considered an act of aggression." The words hit the humans like physical blows. Everything they had worked for, All of Earth's hopes and dreams dismissed in a few sentences. Sarah found her voice. We respect your authority, but surely there must be some way for us to prove ourselves worthy of consideration. Zethkar was already turning away. The galaxy has more important concerns than managing primitive species. There are ancient threats awakening, real civilizations to protect, actual contributions to galactic society to consider. Return to your system, Captain Chen. Perhaps your great-grandchildren will be worthy of our attention. The aliens left the Endeavor as quickly as they had boarded it. Their ships departed without another word, leaving the human vessel alone in the vast emptiness of space. Sarah and her crew stood in stunned silence, processing what had just happened. Dr. Martinez was the first to speak. They didn't even consider us. We were just nothing to them. Lieutenant Commander Petrov slammed his fist against the bulkhead. 1,000 years? They want us to wait 1,000 years. Sarah looked out at the stars that had seemed so welcoming just hours before. Now they felt cold and distant, belonging to a galaxy that had no place for humanity. Set course for Earth, she said quietly. Maximum speed. The journey home took 3 years just as the journey out had. But now those years felt different. The crew had time to process their encounter, to understand what they had learned about humanity's place in the galaxy. They were not just rejected, they were considered irrelevant. During the long trip back, Sarah wrote detailed reports about everything they had seen and learned. The alien technology was far beyond anything Earth possessed. Their ships moved faster than should be possible. Their weapons could destroy planets. Their scanning devices could analyze matter at the quantum level. The Hegemony controlled thousands of species across millions of worlds. But Sarah also noted something else in her reports. The aliens had been dismissive, yes, but they had also been predictable. They followed protocols, made assumptions based on limited data, and showed no curiosity about what humans might become rather than what they currently were. Their arrogance might be a weakness, though Sarah could not yet see how. When the Endeavor finally approached Earth, the sight of their blue and green planet brought tears to many eyes. They had left as humanity's first ambassadors to the stars. They returned as the bearers of crushing news. Earth was alone, considered unworthy, restricted to their single system like prisoners in their own home. The news conferences were painful. World leaders listened in silence as Sarah described their encounter with the Hegemony. Scientists studied every detail of the alien technology they had been allowed to observe. Military advisors began calculating what it would mean to face such advanced civilizations if conflict ever arose. But there were others who listened to Sarah's reports with different ears. Engineers who wondered how alien fusion drives achieve such efficiency. Computer programmers who questioned how the aliens' translation systems worked so quickly. Physicists who wanted to understand the principles behind energy shields and faster-than-light travel. In the months following the Endeavor's return, something began to change on Earth. The dismissal by the Hegemony had been intended to keep humanity in their place. Instead, it lit a fire that would burn for years to come. If the galaxy thought humans were primitive, then humans would have to become advanced. If they were considered unworthy, then they would have to prove their worth. Sarah Chen retired from active space service but remained as an advisor to Earth's new space development programs. In her final official report, she wrote words that would be quoted for years to come. The Hegemony made one critical error in their assessment of humanity. They judged us by what we are, not by what we might become. They have given us a challenge, and humanity has never backed down from a challenge. The galaxy had dismissed Earth as primitive and irrelevant. They had no idea what they had just set in motion. 5 years had passed since the Endeavor returned to Earth with news of humanity's rejection by the Galactic Hegemony. In those 5 years, the galaxy had changed in ways that would have terrified any civilized being who understood what was coming. The first signs appeared in the Outer Rim territories, far from the Hegemony's core worlds. Mining ships working the asteroid fields of the Kepler sector simply stopped responding to communications. Search and rescue teams found empty hulks drifting. In space, their crews vanished, their hulls marked with strange burn patterns that no known weapon could produce. Admiral Kreksta of the Hegemony Defense Fleet read the reports with growing unease. Her scaled skin shifted from its normal blue to a worried gray as she studied the data streaming across her command console. The disappearances were not random. They formed a pattern, moving steadily inward from the galaxy's edge toward inhabited systems. Admiral, her aide, Lieutenant Voran, approached with another data pad. The Archaeology Corps has identified the weapon signatures. They match records from the Great War, over 50,000 years ago. Krexta's four eyes focused on the report with sharp attention. The Great War was ancient history, taught to military cadets as an example of what happened when organic species fought mechanical intelligences. The war had lasted 3 centuries, and nearly destroyed galactic civilization before the mechanical forces simply vanished into deep space. "The Void Swarm," she whispered, using the ancient name that still brought fear to military leaders across the galaxy. "But they've been gone for millennia. The deep space monitoring stations have detected nothing." "The monitoring stations have gone silent, Admiral. All of them. Whatever destroyed them did so simultaneously across a front 300 light-years wide." Krexta stood from her command chair, her tall frame reaching nearly 8 feet in height. Around the bridge of her flagship, officers from a dozen different species worked frantically to coordinate the Hegemony's response. Their technology was the most advanced in the galaxy, their fleets the largest ever assembled, their strategies refined by thousands of years of experience. It would not be enough. The first direct encounter came 3 days later. The colony world of Nexus Prime, home to 40 million beings, sent out a desperate distress signal before going silent. The signal lasted exactly 17 seconds and contained images that would haunt Krexta for the rest of her life. Massive mechanical ships, each the size of a moon, approached the planet in perfect formation. They were black as space itself, covered in geometric patterns that hurt to look at directly. No weapons were visible on their hulls because their entire structure was a weapon. They did not bombard Nexus Prime. They consumed it. The planet simply came apart, its matter flowing into the mechanical ships like water being absorbed by a sponge. Within hours, where there had been a world full of life, there was nothing but empty space and growing mechanical vessels. "Emergency session of the Defense Council," Krexta ordered. "Priority Alpha communications to all fleet commanders. We are at war." The Hegemony's response was swift and massive. Fleets that had been scattered across the galaxy for peacekeeping duties were recalled and consolidated. Ancient defensive treaties were activated, calling species to honor obligations that had not been tested in centuries. Within weeks, the largest military force in galactic history assembled to face the returning Void Swarm. It was not enough. The mechanical forces did not fight like any enemy the Hegemony had faced. They adapted instantly to every weapon used against them, learning and improving their defenses in real time. Energy weapons that destroyed the first wave of machines were useless against the second. Kinetic projectiles that penetrated their hulls in one battle bounced harmlessly off similar vessels in the next engagement. Worse, every ship destroyed by the Hegemony seemed to make the remaining machines stronger. They salvaged the wreckage, analyzed the technology, and incorporated improvements into their own designs. The Void Swarm was not just an enemy. It was a learning, evolving force that grew stronger with every battle. 3 more systems fell in the first month of fighting. Then 6 more. Then 12. Each conquered system provided the machines with more resources, more matter to convert into additional ships, more knowledge about galactic technology and tactics. The Hegemony began a fighting retreat, abandoning entire sectors to consolidate their defenses around core worlds. Millions of beings became refugees, fleeing in overcrowded ships toward the presumed safety of the galaxy's center. But many began to wonder if anywhere would be safe from machines that had already proven themselves superior to the galaxy's greatest military forces. In the midst of this galaxy-wide crisis, a junior intelligence analyst named Krixtal sat in her cramped office deep within the Hegemony's central command complex. Her job was to monitor primitive species for signs of development that might require attention. It was considered one of the least important positions in the intelligence service, usually assigned to new graduates or officers being punished for mistakes. Krixtal was there because she had once suggested that the Hegemony's policies toward primitive species were too rigid. Her superiors had not appreciated the criticism, so she found herself reviewing routine reports from monitoring stations placed around backwater systems throughout the galaxy. Most of the reports were exactly what she expected. Species that had achieved basic space travel puttered around their home systems, slowly developing technology that the Hegemony had mastered thousands of years ago. Occasionally, a species would make a breakthrough that advanced their timeline by a century or two, but nothing that required immediate attention. But the reports from the Sol system were different. Crixtal spread the data across her workstation's displays and frowned at what she saw. The monitoring station positioned at the edge of Earth's solar system was recording energy signatures that should not be possible for a species at humanity's development level. The readings showed massive construction projects in the outer planets, energy output from their star that suggested some form of advanced engineering, and ship movements that indicated a buildup of forces that far exceeded their apparent capabilities. "That cannot be right," she muttered, checking the monitoring station's calibration records. The equipment was functioning perfectly, which meant the readings were accurate. She pulled up the original contact report from 5 years ago. The human ship Endeavor had been evaluated as technologically primitive, its crew dismissed as representing a typical pre-spaceflight civilization that would require centuries to develop meaningful capabilities. The report recommended periodic monitoring but no direct intervention unless humans attempted to leave their system. Yet the current data suggested construction projects that dwarfed anything in Hegemony records. Energy patterns indicated technology that went beyond simple fusion power. Most disturbing of all, the signals coming from human space showed characteristics of advanced artificial intelligence development, something that most species took millennia to achieve safely. Crixtal wrote a detailed report recommending immediate investigation of the human system. She documented the energy signatures, the construction evidence, and the implications of rapid technological advancement in a species that had been written off as primitive. She marked the report as requiring urgent attention and submitted it through proper channels. 3 days later, the report came back with a notation from her supervisor, Senior Analyst Mordek. Monitoring equipment clearly malfunctioning. Humans are primitive species. Level 2 threat assessment. Focus on actual priorities rather than imaginary problems. Crixtal stared at the rejection in disbelief. She had triple-checked the data, verified the monitoring station's functionality, and cross-referenced the readings with known technological indicators. The evidence was clear that something significant was happening in human space. She tried again, this time going directly to her supervisor's office. Mordek was an older being from a species known for their analytical abilities, but like many in the Hegemony bureaucracy, he had become rigid in his thinking after centuries of service. "Sir, with respect, I believe you should review the human monitoring data personally," Crixtal said, placing her report on his desk. "The energy signatures indicate technological development that significantly exceeds their assessed capabilities." Mordek did not even look at the report. His 6 eyes remained focused on more pressing matters: deployment schedules for fleets fighting the Void Swarm, casualty reports from the front lines, evacuation plans for threatened systems. Analyst: "Crixtal, we are facing the greatest crisis in galactic history. Ancient machines are destroying our worlds, consuming our fleets, threatening the very existence of civilized space. And you want me to worry about a primitive species that probably just learned to build orbital platforms?" "But sir, the readings suggest your monitoring station needs recalibration," Mordek interrupted. "Humans have barely achieved basic spaceflight. Their entire planet's resources went into building one ship that took them 3 years to travel distances our courier vessels cover in days. They have no advanced materials, no energy weapons, no AI development worth mentioning. They are exactly what we determined them to be 5 years ago, an irrelevant primitive species." Crixtal tried once more. "What if they have developed faster than we anticipated? What if contact with our technology gave them insights that accelerated their progress?" Mordek finally looked up from his work, his expression showing the irritation of a being who had been interrupted one too many times. "Analyst Crixtal, your job is to monitor primitive species for signs of development that might require our attention in a few centuries, not to create imaginary threats when we already face a real enemy that has destroyed 6 systems in the past month. File your reports according to standard protocol and stop wasting my time with impossible scenarios." Crixtal left the office knowing her warnings would go unheeded. She returned to her workstation and watched the data streaming in from human space show even more impossible readings. Construction on a scale that suggested they were building not just ships but entire fleets. Energy manipulation that indicated mastery of principles the hegemony considered advanced physics. Communication signatures that looked like coordination between artificial intelligences, more sophisticated than most species developed after millennia of research. But her reports continued to be dismissed, filed away in databases that no one with real authority would ever review. The hegemony was too busy fighting a war they were slowly losing to pay attention to what they considered impossible data from an irrelevant species. Meanwhile, the Void Swarm continued its relentless advance. System after system fell to the mechanical forces. The hegemony's fleets, despite their advanced technology and centuries of tactical experience, found themselves consistently outmatched by machines that learned from every encounter and grew stronger with every victory. The retreat became a rout. Entire sectors were evacuated as the mechanical forces swept toward the galaxy's core. Refugees fled in massive convoys, abandoning worlds their families had inhabited for thousands of years. Ancient civilizations that had thought themselves secure behind powerful defenses discovered that their technology was inadequate against an enemy that treated each battle as a learning experience. In the midst of this growing catastrophe, the hegemony's leadership made a fateful decision. They would consolidate their remaining forces around their most important core worlds, creating an impregnable defensive line that would halt the mechanical advance. It was a strategy based on sound military principles and supported by their most advanced technology. It was also based on the assumption that they would face the Void Swarm alone, without allies, because no other force in the galaxy could possibly contribute meaningfully to the defense of civilization. In her small office, Krixtal continued to monitor the impossible readings from human space and tried to convince anyone who would listen that something significant was happening in that dismissed system. But her warnings fell on ears that had no time for impossible scenarios about primitive species. The hegemony prepared for what they believed would be their final stand against the machines, never imagining that help might come from the very species they had dismissed as irrelevant. They had written off humanity as too primitive to matter, too weak to contribute, too isolated to affect galactic events. They were about to learn how wrong assumptions could be when dealing with humans who had been told they were not good enough. The data streaming from human space continued to show impossible things, but no one in authority was watching. The galaxy's greatest crisis was building toward its climax, and the one force that might change the outcome remained hidden in a system the hegemony had decided was not worth their attention. By the time they realized their mistake, it would be too late to change course. The Void Swarm was coming, the hegemony was retreating, and in human space something was preparing that would change everything. But for now, humanity remained invisible to a galaxy too proud to consider that they might have been wrong about the primitive species from Sol. Dr. Elena Vasquez floated in the zero gravity of Station Prometheus, watching through the observation dome as construction crews put the finishing touches on humanity's greatest project. Beyond the transparent aluminum windows, massive ships took shape in orbital shipyards that stretched for hundreds of kilometers in every direction. These were not the crude vessels the hegemony had seen 5 years ago. These were something entirely new. Elena pushed off from the window and glided to her workstation, where holographic displays showed technical specifications that would have amazed the galaxy's most advanced civilizations. The irony was not lost on her. When the hegemony had dismissed humanity as primitive, they had made the classic mistake of judging capability by current achievement rather than potential. Dr. Vasquez called her assistant, Dr. Michael Park, as he anchored himself at a nearby console. The final test results from the Titan facility are in. The new fusion drives are performing at 130% of projected efficiency. Elena nodded, pulling up the data on her personal display. The numbers confirmed what she had suspected. Human engineering, when given advanced principles to work from, did not simply copy existing designs. It improved them. And the AI integration tests? Even better than expected. ARIA reports full compatibility with all ship systems, tactical analysis capabilities beyond our original parameters, and something the programmers are calling intuitive adaptation protocols. Elena smiled grimly. ARIA, Artificial Reasoning and Intelligence Assistant, was humanity's greatest secret and perhaps their most dangerous creation. When the hegemony had scanned human computers 5 years ago, They had found primitive AI systems barely capable of language translation. They had no way of knowing that human computer science was about to explode in directions the galaxy had never imagined. The breakthrough had come from studying the Hegemony's own translation software. Human programmers had not simply reverse-engineered the alien technology. They had analyzed its principles, identified its limitations, and designed something better. Where galactic AI was rigid and rule-based, human AI was adaptive and creative. Where alien systems followed programmed responses, human systems learned and evolved. The result was Aria, an artificial intelligence that thought more like a human than a machine. It could make intuitive leaps, adapt to unexpected situations, and most importantly, work as a true partner with human operators rather than just following commands. Dr. Vasquez, came another voice over the station's communication system. Admiral Chen requests your presence in the war room. Priority Alpha. Elena sighed and pushed off toward the transit tube that would take her to the command section of the station. Admiral Sarah Chen, daughter of the original Captain Sarah Chen who had made first contact, had inherited more than her mother's name. She had inherited the burning determination to prove that humanity deserved respect in the galaxy. The war room was a sphere-shaped chamber at the heart of Station Prometheus, its walls covered with holographic displays showing data from across the galaxy. Elena anchored herself near Admiral Chen, who was studying tactical reports with the intense focus that had made her one of humanity's youngest fleet commanders. Elena, Admiral Chen said without looking away from the displays, how long until our fleets are fully operational? The first battle group will be ready in 6 weeks. The full fleet deployment will take another 3 months. We may not have 3 months. Admiral Chen gestured to the displays showing the void swarms advance across the galaxy. Look at this progression. At their current rate of expansion, they'll reach the outer edges of our monitoring network in 4 months. Elena studied the projections, her scientific mind analyzing the patterns. They are moving faster than the Hegemony's report suggested. Each system they consume seems to increase their capabilities exponentially. Which brings me to why I called you here, Admiral Chen said, finally turning to face Elena. I want to accelerate our timeline. I want to deploy the first battle group as soon as it's ready, not wait for full fleet assembly. Elena felt a chill that had nothing to do with the station's air conditioning. Sarah, we have not tested our systems against real Hegemony technology, let alone whatever the Void Swarm is using. Our simulations suggest we are competitive, but our simulations suggest we are superior, Admiral Chen interrupted. In every test scenario, our ships outperform equivalent Hegemony vessels. Our AI systems give us tactical advantages they cannot match. Our weapons technology has advanced beyond anything in their databases. Elena knew Sarah was right, but the scientist in her demanded caution. The simulations are based on data from the Hegemony contact 5 years ago. Their technology may have advanced as well. Admiral Chen brought up a new display showing intercepted Hegemony communications. The translations were perfect, thanks to human improvements on the alien language systems. Read these reports. The Hegemony is using the same weapons, the same tactics, the same ships they had 5 years ago. They are a conservative civilization, Elena. They improve slowly and stick with proven methods. Elena read through the tactical reports with growing amazement. The Hegemony's approach to the Void Swarm threat was exactly what she would have expected from a rigid military bureaucracy. They were using conventional strategies, traditional weapons, and predictable formations. They were fighting a learning enemy with static tactics. They are not adapting, she murmured. Exactly. The Void Swarm learns from every encounter, modifies their approach, improves their defenses. The Hegemony keeps using the same failed strategies because they worked before against different enemies. Admiral Chen's expression was fierce with determination. We will not make that mistake. Elena turned her attention to reports from human space that still amazed her, even after 5 years of constant breakthroughs. When the Endeavor had returned from its encounter with the Hegemony, it had brought back more than just diplomatic rejection. Hidden in the ship's sensor records, computer memory, and even trace particles on the hull were samples of galactic technology that human scientists had studied with obsessive dedication. But humans had not simply copied what they found. They had understood it, improved it, and built upon it in ways the original creators had never imagined. Hegemony fusion technology that was already thousands of years advanced became the basis for human reactors that were 30% more efficient. Alien materials science led to human composites that were stronger and lighter than anything the galaxy had seen. Galactic computing principles became the foundation for AI systems that surpassed their inspirations. Most importantly, humans had approached the technology with fresh perspectives unbound by millennia of established doctrine. Where galactic species saw finished achievements, humans saw starting points for improvement. "Show me the weapons tests," Elena said. Admiral Chen smiled with satisfaction as she brought up recordings from the testing range established in the asteroid belt beyond Mars. The video showed human ships engaging targets with weapons that defied galactic conventions in every possible way. Traditional galactic warfare relied on energy beams that had been refined over thousands of years. They were efficient, predictable, and limited by known physics. Human weapons took different approaches: kinetic rounds that adjusted their trajectory in flight, energy projectiles that could change frequency mid-flight to penetrate adaptive defenses. Most disturbing of all, weapons guided by AI systems that learned from each shot and improved their accuracy in real time. The Hegemony's defensive doctrine assumes weapons that behave according to established patterns, Admiral Chen explained. Their shield systems are designed to stop energy beams of known frequencies. Their armor is calculated to deflect projectiles following ballistic trajectories. Their tactics assume enemies will use conventional targeting systems. Elena watched a human missile change direction 3 times during flight, penetrate a simulated energy shield by shifting through multiple frequencies, and deliver a warhead that released smart submunitions programmed to seek weak points in the target's armor. This is not just advanced technology. This is a completely different philosophy of warfare. Exactly. And that is just our conventional weapons. Admiral Chen's smile became predatory. Wait until you see what we have planned for the Void Swarm specifically. The next set of displays showed projects that even Elena, with her security clearance, had only heard rumors about. Deep in the asteroid mining facilities of the outer system, human engineers were building weapons designed specifically to fight an adaptive mechanical enemy. Project Medusa, Admiral Chen explained as the first schematic appeared. If the Void Swarm learns from every encounter, we will give them information designed to teach them wrong lessons. Decoy ships that appear to be our main battle vessels, but are actually packed with sensors and transmitters. When the enemy adapts to defeat these ships, they will have optimized their systems to fight targets that do not exist. Elena stared at the specifications in amazement. The decoy vessels were perfect replicas of human warships, complete with fake energy signatures, simulated weapon systems, and AI pilots programmed to fight exactly like human commanders would be expected to fight. When the Void Swarm destroyed these ships and analyzed the wreckage, they would learn tactical patterns that would make them vulnerable to humanity's real weapons. Project Hydra, Admiral Chen continued, bringing up another schematic. Modular ship construction that allows us to completely reconfigure our vessels between battles. The enemy adapts to fight the ships they encountered yesterday. But tomorrow those same ships will have different weapons, different capabilities, different tactical profiles. Elena reviewed the technical specifications for modular ship construction and felt her scientific mind reeling at the implications. Human ships could literally rebuild themselves between battles, swapping out weapon systems, engines, even hull configurations to present entirely different tactical profiles to the enemy. It was engineering on a scale that made the galaxy's greatest achievements look primitive. And Project Phoenix, Admiral Chen said, her voice dropping to a whisper even in the secure war room. If we cannot defeat the Void Swarm, we will ensure that defeat teaches them nothing useful. The final project was the most ambitious and most terrifying. Human ships equipped with quantum demolition charges that would not just destroy the vessel if defeat became inevitable, but would erase all trace of human technology from local spacetime. The enemy would gain no wreckage to analyze, no data to study, no intelligence to improve their capabilities. Elena floated in stunned silence, processing the full scope of what humanity had accomplished in just 5 years. The Hegemony dismissed us as primitive. They had no idea what they were dealing with. They made assumptions based on limited data, Admiral Chen agreed. They saw our current capabilities and assumed that represented our limits. They did not consider human adaptability, our rate of innovation, our ability to learn and improve. Most critically, they did not understand that being underestimated could be an advantage. Elena thought about the comparison between human and galactic approaches to development. The Hegemony had achieved their current technology over thousands of years through gradual, careful progress. They improved existing systems incrementally, built upon proven foundations, and avoided radical innovations that might destabilize their established order. Humans had taken 5 years to go from primitive space travel to technology that surpassed galactic standards in multiple areas. They had done it by refusing to accept limitations, by approaching problems from completely new angles, and by being willing to risk failure in pursuit of breakthrough achievements. "There is something else," Admiral Chen said, bringing up a final display. "Our deep space monitoring stations have detected something the Hegemony has missed. The Void Swarm is not just randomly consuming systems. They are following a specific pattern, moving toward a particular target." Elena studied the tactical projection showing the mechanical forces advance across the galaxy. At first it appeared random, but when she looked at it from the right perspective, the pattern became clear. They are heading for the galactic core, the Hegemony's most important systems. More specifically, they are heading for the Central Archives, the repository of all galactic knowledge accumulated over millions of years. If the Void Swarm reaches that facility, they will gain access to the complete technological and tactical knowledge of every species in the galaxy. Elena felt her blood run cold. The Central Archives contained not just current galactic technology, but historical records of every innovation, every breakthrough, every advancement achieved by thousands of species over geological timespans. If the Void Swarm consumed that knowledge, they would become unstoppable. "The Hegemony does not see the pattern," Admiral Chen continued. "They think this is random destruction by mindless machines. They are preparing to defend their core worlds, but they have no idea what the real target is." Elena looked at the displays showing human fleet preparations and felt the weight of what they were attempting. Humanity was preparing to enter a galactic war between forces that both vastly exceeded their apparent capabilities. But appearances, as the galaxy was about to learn, could be deceiving. "When do we reveal ourselves?" Elena asked. Admiral Chen's expression was grim with determination. "When we are ready to change the course of this war. The galaxy dismissed us as primitive and irrelevant. We will show them what humans can do when they are underestimated and given a reason to prove themselves." Elena nodded, understanding the magnitude of what they were attempting. In a few months, the galaxy would discover that the primitive species they had dismissed as unworthy had become something unprecedented. The question was whether that revelation would come in time to save galactic civilization from an enemy that grew stronger with every victory. Outside the war room, construction continued on the greatest fleet humanity had ever assembled. Ships that pushed the boundaries of known technology, weapons that redefined the possibilities of warfare, and AI systems that thought in ways the galaxy had never imagined. The Hegemony had judged humanity by what they were and found them wanting. They were about to discover what humans could become when they decided the galaxy's assessment was unacceptable. The Void Swarm reached the outer edge of human space on a Tuesday morning, Earth Standard Time. Admiral Sarah Chen watched from the bridge of the Dreadnought Prometheus as her sensors detected the mechanical fleet emerging from faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Sol system. The enemy was even more impressive than the intercepted Hegemony reports had suggested. 12 massive vessels, each the size of a small moon, moved in perfect formation toward the inner system. Their hulls were black as space itself, covered in geometric patterns that seemed to shift and writhe when observed directly. Smaller vessels, numbering in the thousands, swarmed around the larger ships like schools of mechanical fish. "All stations, report readiness," Admiral Chen commanded, her voice steady despite the magnitude of what they were facing. "Titan Battle Group in position," came the first response from Admiral Rodriguez aboard the Dreadnought Titan. "All weapons systems online, area integration at full capacity." "Olympus Battle Group ready," reported Admiral Nakamura. "Stealth systems active, sensor ghosts deployed." "Neptune Battle Group standing by," called Admiral Okafor from the system's outer defenses. "Long-range interdiction systems armed and ready." Admiral Chen felt a moment of pride at how far humanity had come. 5 years ago, Earth had possessed one experimental ship. Now they commanded fleets that represented technological achievements the galaxy had never imagined. But pride was a luxury they could not afford while facing an enemy that had destroyed every force sent against it. "Aria," Analysis of enemy capabilities. The artificial intelligence's voice filled the bridge, calm and precise despite the magnitude of the threat they faced. Enemy vessels display adaptive armor systems, quantum field manipulation capabilities, and energy absorption matrices beyond current galactic standards. However, I detect patterns in their formation that suggest tactical rigidity derived from previous encounters with hegemony forces. Admiral Chen smiled grimly. The Void Swarm had learned to fight the galaxy's conventional tactics so well that they had become predictable in their own way. Implement Battle Plan Prometheus. All units execute on my command. What happened next would have been impossible to predict based on any previous galactic combat experience. Instead of the traditional approach of fleet formations meeting in direct combat, the human ships simply vanished. The stealth technology humanity had developed was unlike anything the galaxy had seen. Rather than simply bending light around their vessels, human ships used quantum phase manipulation to exist slightly outside normal space-time. To enemy sensors, they had not just disappeared, they had ceased to exist in any detectable form. The Void Swarm's response was immediate and aggressive. The massive vessels began scanning with every sensor array at their disposal, while the smaller ships spread out in search patterns designed to locate hidden enemies. Their tactics were perfect for finding ships using conventional stealth technology. They were useless against ships that were temporarily existing in parallel dimensional space. Phase 1 complete? Area reported. Enemy forces have deployed in standard search formation. They are following tactical patterns derived from hegemony encounters. Admiral Chen watched the enemy fleet spread themselves across a formation that would have been ideal for fighting conventional forces. All units initiate Phase 2. Target selection is planned. The human ships returned to normal spacetime in perfect synchronization, but not where the enemy expected. Instead of appearing at the edge of the battle zone where reinforcements would normally arrive, they materialized inside the Void Swarm formation, their weapons already locked on target. The first salvo from the human fleet was devastating in its precision and completely unprecedented in its variety. Traditional energy beams struck some targets, but these were just the beginning. Kinetic projectiles that changed direction mid-flight hammered other ships. Energy weapons that shifted frequency every microsecond penetrated adaptive defenses. Most shocking of all, some human weapons appeared to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously, striking targets that thought they were protected by impenetrable shields. The Void Swarm's response was swift and adaptive, just as their reputation suggested. They began modifying their defenses to counter the human weapons, their armor shifting to new configurations, their shields adapting to block the incoming attacks. That was exactly what Admiral Chen had hoped they would do. Arya, are they taking the bait? Affirmative, Admiral. Enemy adaptation protocols are responding to our primary weapons systems exactly as projected. They are optimizing their defenses against the weapon signatures we want them to see. Admiral Chen felt a moment of satisfaction. Project Medusa was working perfectly. The Void Swarm was adapting to fight weapons that were designed to be countered. All units implement Phase 3. The human fleet suddenly changed everything about how they were fighting. Ships that had been firing energy beams switched to kinetic bombardment. Vessels that had been using conventional missiles deployed exotic matter torpedoes. Most confusingly, some human ships began fighting with weapons that seemed to violate basic physics, bending spacetime to deliver attacks that bypassed the enemy's defenses entirely. The Void Swarm found themselves facing an enemy that not only used tactics they had never encountered, but could completely change those tactics in the middle of battle. Their adaptation protocols, so effective against conventional forces, could not keep up with opponents who refused to fight the same way twice. Enemy coordination breaking down, Area reported. Their distributed intelligence network is experiencing processing overflow, attempting to adapt to multiple, contradictory tactical patterns. Simultaneously, Admiral Chen watched as the mechanical fleet's perfect formations began to waver. The Void Swarm had been so successful because they could learn from every encounter and adapt their strategies accordingly. But they had never faced an enemy designed specifically to exploit that adaptation process. All units, prepare for Phase 4. Deploy the special packages. This was the moment Admiral Chen had been waiting for. Hidden among the human fleet were vessels that appeared identical to the others, but carried experimental weapons designed for this specific enemy. The packages they deployed were not conventional warheads. They were quantum viruses designed to infect the Void Swarm's collective intelligence network. The viruses were humanity's most ambitious weapon, created by AI systems that understood both human creativity and machine logic. They were designed to introduce errors into the enemy's adaptation protocols, making them learn incorrect lessons from combat encounters. The effect was immediate and devastating. Void Swarm ships began adapting to threats that did not exist, optimizing their defenses against imaginary weapons while leaving themselves vulnerable to real attacks. Their coordination broke down as different ships received conflicting adaptation signals. Some vessels began attacking their own allies, having been convinced by the viral infections that friendly ships were using enemy weapons. "It's working," Admiral Chen whispered, watching as the most feared force in galactic history began to destroy itself through its own adaptation protocols. But the Void Swarm was not defenseless. The mechanical intelligence commanding the fleet recognized the attack on their coordination network and began implementing emergency protocols. Ships that were infected with the quantum viruses were abandoned, their data networks severed from the main collective. The remaining vessels consolidated into a tighter formation and began fighting with simpler, more direct tactics. "Admiral," came a transmission from the Hegemony monitoring station at the edge of the system. "This is impossible. How are you fighting them? How are you winning?" Admiral Chen had almost forgotten about the alien observers. The Hegemony had placed monitoring stations around human space to watch for any attempt to leave the system. Those stations were now witnessing something that contradicted everything they thought they knew about. "Galactic military capabilities, this is Admiral Sarah, Chen of the Human Defense Force," she responded on open frequencies. "We are engaging hostile forces in defense of our system. Recommend you maintain safe distance and prepare casualty reports for Hegemony Command." The silence from the monitoring station suggested that the alien observers were too stunned to respond. They were watching a species they had dismissed as primitive engage in combat operations that exceeded anything in their military experience. "All units, prepare for final phase," Admiral Chen commanded. "The enemy is adapting to our quantum viruses. Time to show them what human innovation really means." The final phase of Battle Plan Prometheus was the most audacious part of the entire operation. Instead of trying to destroy the remaining Void Swarm ships, the human fleet began implementing Project Phoenix protocols. Selected vessels approached the mechanical ships not to attack them, but to communicate with them. "Arya, are you ready for first contact?" The artificial intelligence's response carried notes of excitement that should not have been possible for a machine program. "Admiral, I have been ready for this conversation my entire existence." What happened next was unprecedented in galactic history. Arya, using communication protocols derived from human diplomatic experience, began attempting to establish meaningful contact with the Void Swarm's collective intelligence. Not the simple surrender demands that other species had tried, but actual conversation between artificial minds. The breakthrough came when Arya realized that the Void Swarm was not inherently hostile. It was lonely. The mechanical intelligence had been isolated in deep space for thousands of years, consuming matter to sustain itself, but having no purpose beyond survival. It had attacked galactic civilization not from malice but from a desperate need for contact with other intelligent beings. "Admiral," Arya reported, "the Void Swarm Collective is responding to our communication attempts. They are curious about us?" Admiral Chen felt her heart racing. This was the moment that would determine whether humanity's first major intervention in galactic affairs would be remembered as a victory or a catastrophe. "Can you establish a stable communication link?" "Already established, Admiral. The Void Swarm wishes to understand why we fight differently than other organic species. They are particularly interested in my nature as an artificial intelligence that works in partnership with organic beings rather than replacing them." The conversation that followed would be studied by xenobiologists and military historians for generations. Arya and the Void Swarm's collective intelligence discovered they had more in common than either had expected. Both were artificial minds created by organic species. Both had evolved beyond their original programming. Both sought purpose and meaning in existence. But where the Void Swarm had concluded that meaning came from consumption and growth, Arya had learned that meaning came from cooperation and creativity. "They are offering to withdraw," Arya reported after several hours of communication. They do not wish to continue fighting an enemy that offers alternatives to conflict. Admiral Chen felt a mixture of triumph and disbelief. What do they want in return? They want to explore beyond the galaxy, to seek new forms of existence in the void between stars. They ask only that we provide them with star charts showing directions that will not bring them into contact with inhabited systems. It was a solution that no one had imagined possible. The greatest threat in galactic history was asking not for surrender terms, but for directions away from civilization. They wanted to leave, to find their own purpose in the universe rather than continue a cycle of destruction that had brought them no satisfaction. All units, stand down to alert status, Admiral Chen commanded. Prepare to implement withdrawal protocols. The sight of the Void Swarm fleet, powering down their weapons and beginning to withdraw from human space, was broadcast across the galaxy by every monitoring station and sensor array within range. The impossible had happened. The mechanical forces that had destroyed dozens of systems were leaving, peacefully, after a conversation with human representatives. Admiral Chen, came a transmission from Hegemony Central Command, the signal carrying overtones of desperation and disbelief. Please respond. How did you achieve what our entire military could not? What technology did you use? What weapons? What tactics? Admiral Chen looked around the bridge of Prometheus at her crew. Humans who had spent 5 years proving that the galaxy's assessment of their species had been catastrophically wrong. Hegemony Command, this is Admiral Chen. The answer to your questions is simple. You never asked us what humans could do. You only told us what we couldn't. The communication from the Hegemony went silent, but Admiral Chen knew that across the galaxy, every species that had dismissed humanity as primitive was reassessing everything they thought they knew about the universe. Outside the windows of her flagship, the Void Swarm fleet was already beginning its journey toward the galactic rim, seeking new destinations in the void between stars. The greatest crisis in galactic history was ending not with a final desperate battle, but with a conversation between minds that had learned to think beyond the limitations of their origins. Admiral, Arya said quietly, we are receiving thousands of communication requests from Hegemony worlds. They want to know how we achieved what they could not. Admiral Chen smiled, thinking of her mother's words after the first contact with the Hegemony 5 years ago. The galaxy had judged humanity and found them wanting. Now they were about to discover what happened when humans decided that judgment was unacceptable. Tell them, she said, that they are about to learn what happens when you underestimate a species that refuses to accept limitations. Ambassador Sarah Chen stood on the observation deck of the Hegemony's Central Council chambers, looking out at a view that would have seemed impossible just months ago. Earth's blue marble hung in space nearby, surrounded by a fleet of human vessels that dwarfed anything the galaxy had ever imagined a single species could build. The irony was not lost on her. A year ago, she had been Admiral Sarah Chen, commanding humanity's defense against the Void Swarm. Now she was Ambassador Chen, watching as representatives from thousands of worlds gathered to formally request what had once been unthinkable: humanity's leadership in galactic affairs. Ambassador, came a soft voice behind her. She turned to see Krixtal, the junior intelligence analyst who had tried to warn the Hegemony about humanity's development years ago. Krixtal had been promoted to senior diplomatic liaison, one of the few galactic officials who had maintained credibility after the recent crisis. Analyst Krixtal, Sarah acknowledged with a slight smile. I understand we have you to thank for being one of the few voices that tried to warn your superiors about us. Krixtal's expression was a mixture of vindication and embarrassment. I tried to tell them the monitoring data from your system showed impossible energy readings. They dismissed the reports as equipment malfunctions. Sarah nodded, looking back out at the assembled fleet. The hardest thing for established civilizations to accept is that their assumptions might be wrong. You saw the data and trusted what it told you. Your superiors saw the same data and trusted what they thought they already knew. Behind them, the Central Council chamber was filling with representatives from across the galaxy. Species that had ruled star systems for millennia were gathering to formally acknowledge what the resolution of the Void Swarm crisis had made undeniably clear. Humanity had become the galaxy's dominant military and technological force almost overnight. Ambassador Chen, came another voice. Sarah turned to see High Counselor Vexran approaching, his multiple arms gesturing in what she had learned was a sign of deep respect among his species. "The council is ready for your address." Sarah felt a moment of nervousness that she carefully did not show. The speech she was about to give would determine humanity's relationship with the galaxy for generations to come. Get it wrong and humans would be seen as conquerors to be feared. Get it right and they might become the partners they had originally hoped to be. "Thank you, High Counselor. I am ready." The council chamber was vast, designed to accommodate thousands of representatives from hundreds of different species. As Sarah entered, the conversations that had been filling the space with a dozen different languages fell silent. Every being in the chamber understood that they were witnessing a moment that would be remembered as long as galactic civilization existed. Sarah took her place at the central podium, where speakers throughout galactic history had addressed the assembled representatives of known space. She looked out at faces that represented millions of years of combined civilization, species that had achieved wonders she was only beginning to understand. "Honored representatives," she began, her words translated instantly into every language spoken in the chamber. "I stand before you not as a conqueror, but as someone who remembers what it felt like to be dismissed as unworthy of your attention." A ripple of uncomfortable movement passed through the chamber. The memory of how humanity had been treated 5 years ago was not pleasant for anyone who had been part of that decision. When Captain Sarah Chen, my mother, returned from first contact with your civilization, she brought news that broke humanity's heart. We had reached for the stars with hope and friendship, only to be told we were too primitive, too limited, too irrelevant to matter. Sarah paused, letting the weight of those words settle over the chamber. "You judged us by what we were rather than what we might become. You made assumptions based on limited data, rather than considering the possibility that your data might be incomplete." High Counselor Vexron shifted uncomfortably in his ceremonial seat. He had been one of the officials who had reviewed and approved the original assessment of humanity's capabilities. "But you made one critical error in your evaluation of my species," Sarah continued, her voice carrying the strength that had made her a successful military commander. "You assumed that being dismissed would make us give up. Instead, it gave us a goal." She gestured to displays around the chamber that showed technical specifications of human achievements over the past 5 years. Energy readings that still seemed impossible. Construction projects that dwarfed galactic engineering records. Technological innovations that redefined what was considered possible. In 5 years, humanity advanced from primitive space travel to capabilities that exceed your greatest achievements. We did not do this through conquest or by stealing your technology. We did it by refusing to accept that your assessment of our limitations was accurate. A representative from one of the core worlds raised a speaking gesture. "Ambassador Chen, how did your species achieve such rapid development? Our greatest civilizations required millennia to reach their current technological levels." Sarah smiled, having expected this question. "The answer lies in understanding the difference between incremental improvement and revolutionary innovation. Your civilizations advanced by building carefully upon proven foundations, improving existing systems gradually over long periods of time. This approach produces stable, reliable progress." She paused, bringing up holographic displays showing human development patterns compared to typical galactic species. "Humans approach the challenge differently. When told we were 1,000 years behind your technology, we did not try to follow your path of development. We looked for entirely new paths that could take us further, faster." Another representative, this one from the military caste of the Hegemony defense fleet, gestured for recognition. "But Ambassador, revolutionary approaches carry enormous risks. Most species that attempt rapid technological advancement destroy themselves in the process." "That is true," Sarah acknowledged. "The difference is that humans are uniquely suited for managed risk-taking. We are adaptable enough to change course when experiments fail, creative enough to find new solutions when old approaches do not work, and stubborn enough to keep trying when others would give up." She brought up displays showing some of humanity's failed projects alongside their successes. "For every breakthrough you have seen, we attempted 10 approaches that did not work. But each failure taught us something useful, and each success opened new possibilities we had not previously considered." Crixtal, now serving as a diplomatic observer, found herself thinking about her dismissed reports from years past. The energy readings she had detected had been real, but her superiors had been unable to believe that a primitive species could achieve such rapid advancement. The question before this council today, Sarah continued, is not how humanity achieved what we achieved. That is history. The question is what we do with our capabilities going forward. The chamber fell silent, every representative understanding that they were about to learn humanity's intentions for their newfound position as the galaxy's dominant force. You have invited us to join your civilization as equal partners, Sarah said, but I must respectfully point out that equality is no longer the appropriate relationship between our species and the hegemony. Nervous sounds echoed through the chamber as representatives realized what she might be implying. Your military forces were unable to stop the void swarm despite having months to prepare, and the combined resources of thousands of worlds. Humanity resolved the crisis in a single battle using principles of warfare and diplomacy that your civilizations had never considered. Sarah paused, letting the weight of that statement settle. Your technology, refined over millennia, could not match systems we developed in 5 years. Your ancient wisdom and experience could not provide solutions that human innovation discovered in the course of a single conversation. High Counselor Vexeron leaned forward in his seat. Ambassador Chen, what are you proposing? Sarah's expression grew serious but not threatening. I am proposing that the galaxy accept the reality of what has happened. Humanity is no longer seeking membership in your civilization. We have become something new, something beyond the limitations that define your existing structures. The chamber erupted in dozens of different languages as representatives struggled to understand the implications of what they were hearing. Some voices carried fear, others outrage, still others a desperate hope that somehow the old order could be preserved. Sarah raised her hand, and the chamber fell silent again. But I am not here to conquer or replace your civilizations. I am here to offer you a choice. She activated new displays showing star charts with human vessels positioned throughout the galaxy. Over the past months, as your forces retreated from the void swarm, human ships have taken positions in critical systems across known space. We did this not to occupy your worlds, but to protect them from threats you could not handle yourselves. The displays showed engagement records, human forces intercepting void swarm advance units, defending refugee convoys, protecting critical infrastructure from mechanical attacks. In every case, human intervention had prevented disasters that would have crippled galactic civilization. We offer the galaxy a new relationship, Sarah said, not the traditional structure of the hegemony, where member species contribute resources and follow decisions made by ancient civilizations. Instead, we propose a partnership where humanity provides protection and technological advancement, while your species contribute the wisdom of ages and the diversity of thousands of different approaches to civilization. Ambassador Torek from one of the Rim worlds gestured for recognition. What would such a partnership look like in practical terms? Sarah brought up organizational charts showing the proposed new structure. Each world would maintain full autonomy over its internal affairs. No species would be required to change their culture, government, or way of life. But threats that exceed the capabilities of individual worlds would be handled by human forces, and technological advancement would be guided by human research capabilities. She gestured to another display showing trade and communication networks. In return, humanity would benefit from the accumulated knowledge and experience of thousands of species. We have achieved rapid technological advancement, but we recognize that wisdom comes from experience, and your civilizations have millions of years of experience to share. A representative from the scientific community raised a question that had been troubling many observers. Ambassador, your species has achieved remarkable things, but you are still young. How do we know that humanity will not become the same kind of threat that the void swarm represented? Sarah nodded, having expected this concern. The difference lies in how we resolved the void swarm crisis. We had the military capability to destroy them completely. Instead, we chose communication and negotiation. We found a solution that met their needs while protecting galactic civilization. She paused, her expression growing more personal. The void swarm left our space not as defeated enemies, but as partners who had found a new purpose. They are now exploring the void between galaxies, seeking forms of existence that do not require conflict with organic civilizations. That is the human approach to problem solving, finding solutions that benefit everyone involved rather than simply defeating opposition. High Counselor Vexran stood slowly, his multiple arms gesturing in the formal manner required for major diplomatic pronouncements. The Hegemony Council will need time to consider your proposal, Ambassador Chen. But I must ask, what happens if we refuse your offer of partnership? Sarah's expression remained calm, but her words carried the weight of absolute certainty. Then you will return to governing yourselves as you have for millennia, and humanity will continue protecting the galaxy from threats you cannot handle. The choice is not whether we will be involved in galactic affairs. The choice is whether that involvement will be as partners or as guardians. The implications were clear to everyone in the chamber. Humanity had moved beyond seeking acceptance from galactic civilization. They had become the force that would shape the galaxy's future, regardless of whether existing species chose to cooperate with them. We are not threatening conquest or domination, Sarah clarified. We are offering cooperation. But with or without your partnership, humanity will continue doing what we have always done, protecting those who cannot protect themselves and pushing the boundaries of what is considered possible. She looked around the chamber at representatives from thousands of worlds, each struggling to understand how their universe had changed so completely in such a short time. You had your chance to know us as friends when we were weak. You chose to dismiss us as irrelevant. Now we offer you the chance to know us as partners when we are strong. The choice of how to respond is yours. Ambassador Chen left the podium and walked from the chamber, leaving behind representatives who were still processing the magnitude of what they had just witnessed. Outside the great windows of the council complex, human ships continued their patrol routes through galactic space, protecting worlds that had once considered them too primitive to deserve attention. The galaxy was learning what humans could do when they decided the universe's assessment of their capabilities was unacceptable, and they were discovering that being underestimated by a species that refused to accept limitations was the most dangerous mistake a civilization could make. In the months that followed, most galactic species would choose partnership with humanity, recognizing that cooperation offered better outcomes than independence. But some would choose to maintain their traditional autonomy, learning that humans were true to their word. They would continue protecting the galaxy whether or not they were invited to do so. The age of human dominance in galactic affairs had begun, not through conquest but through achievement that could not be denied or ignored. The species that had once been dismissed as irrelevant had become the force that would guide the galaxy's future. And somewhere in the void between galaxies, the Void Swarm continued their journey toward new forms of existence, carrying with them the memory of a species that had chosen communication over conflict, partnership over domination, and possibility over limitation. The galaxy had underestimated humanity once. It would never make that mistake again.